Welcome, everyone, again to another episode of Disruption Drive. My next conversation explores the unparalleled legacy of the state of Michigan as it evolves from pioneering smart ecosystems that move people, goods, and information to empowering entire communities as its bold new mission. Joining me today is Charlie Tyson, the Technology Activation Director at Michigan's Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. Charlie happens to be the primary architect of the state's innovation strategy, connecting global pioneers with Michigan's world-class ecosystems. He spends his day across very interesting ideas that include smart corridors to the future of air mobility. And his job is to ensure that the next century of transportation is built, tested, and deployed right here in the Great Lakes state. Charlie, thank you for coming on the show. And I want to start off by asking you, what gives Michigan that edge?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Hari. I really appreciate being on this and sharing the opportunities that we see in Michigan. We feel that Michigan has a number of competitive advantages when it comes to the mobility and advanced transportation ecosystem. One, obviously, our automotive heritage, our manufacturing landscape, but also our top tier universities across the state. We have four R1 universities. We have community colleges across the state with unique programs and focused on transportation and mobility. And then we have strong K through 12 programs that are preparing young students for future careers. So we feel that, again, our auto industry, our supply chain capabilities, our academia, and then I'd also say from a logistics standpoint, the amount of goods traveling through the Midwest and specifically through Michigan poses a significant opportunity for companies to make essentially there's a lot of innovation opportunities when it comes to supply chain logistics, and Michigan's well positioned geographically, in that regard.
You mentioned heritage, talent across various ages, of course, and very much the sort of the volume of the ecosystem of simply goods and people and information that travels through the state of Michigan. Maybe let's start with talent to begin with. You mentioned basically the entire ecosystem, right, with academia, research institutions, technical programs, community colleges, and of course a very strong K through 12 education program. Tell us a bit about that as it relates to transport. And I specifically want to sort of call this, we're going through an inflection point in transport and car. I mean, our background, a lot of this podcast background tends to be in vehicles, but that we're going through fundamentally treating it as a hard good to a, software enabled device. How is Michigan particularly, is that something on Michigan's mind as we build this talent?
Yes, absolutely. And the credit goes to the I'd say primarily the universities across the state with significant research activity, patent creation, and helping spin out companies across the state from universities like University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State University, Michigan Tech University, as examples. Do a great job of inventing, validating, and spinning out new technology that's impacting the world, and specifically the world of transportation and mobility. And then you go down to the community colleges across the state, really looking at special courses and special programs that help prepare students acquire certifications that will make them more competitive in the market. I'd also be remiss to not mention some of the programs. I would call them like innovation incubators, innovation accelerators that are associated with universities or academic institutions. We have many of the academic institutions across the state have established public-private partnerships. They've brought in companies, corporations to work with students to develop new technology that can be again spun out into the real world. And oftentimes these are done through, like I mentioned, incubators and accelerators where there's a dedicated program and support structure to help ideas go from napkin to market. Um,
That's a
and
great point.
so,
Napkin
yeah,
to market.
so that's been really cool. That's something I'm really passionate about is how helping support early stage entrepreneurs, and we have a number of programs that are academic institutions that do just that.
And I want to quickly summarize that, Michigan is the number one state when it comes to mobility and transport related patents, especially in the categories of vehicle processing, even things like navigation and location. So I do want to point that out. But I want to hone in on one of the things you just mentioned. Of course, you work for the government, specifically a government initiative. And one of the things you talk about a lot as the Michigan Economic Development Corporation is a whole of government strategy, specifically as it relates to transportation. What does whole of government strategy mean?
Yeah, well, I think as it relates to mobility and transportation, our office was created to do just that, take a whole of government approach to bolstering and advancing mobility and transportation opportunities, creating economic development output, creating high-paying jobs for Michigan residents, but also improving transportation of people and goods across the state of Michigan. And so that whole of government approach really means our office has a mandate to work to collaborate with other state agencies. Part of our team, our office, the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, is quite unique. I think other states have adopted similar offices now, but really a first of its kind office. And my leadership, Justine Johnson, as the Chief Mobility Officer, is tasked with working across state agencies to support a common vision, common goals in state government to support mobility and transportation. So whether that be Michigan Department of Transportation, how do we help them with, how do we help MDOT with their transportation and infrastructure goals? When it comes to the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity within the state of Michigan, LEO, the acronym, how do we support them as it relates to workforce, talent, and labor? Part of our team is with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and so our office really tries to help support business attraction and business retention efforts through the MEDC. How do we help create private investment, create high-paying jobs? And even to the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy,
Absolutely.
EGLE, another state agency we work closely with, ensuring that our overall mobility strategy incorporates sustainability, clean energy, and that's something that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy is heavily focused on. But I would even say, we work with Michigan State Police, and how do we support connecting Michigan State Police with new technology to support public safety, to even the Department of Natural Resources, and how do we support outdoor recreation in our public lands as it relates to sustainability, access, and how do we help companies that are disrupting those in a positive way, disrupting the future of public lands and outdoor recreation? How do we connect them to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources? So long way of saying that our mobility plan 2.0 that I would love for you to share if you can, incorporates, it tries to package together all these different various interests at the state level into one strategy, and that's that whole government approach that we talk about.
Absolutely. And it's sort of a peculiarity and maybe special to transport and mobility that it really touches every aspect of the things you talked about. It requires industry. It requires consideration of society, which it requires because we are working with basically things like crime prevention and law enforcement with the police, and of course with an environmental consideration as well. With I'm assuming, and of course the Department of Energy across and so it's transport really enables an entire economy, and of course Michigan is leading the way. I know that, by the way, for all our listeners, the Mobility Vision 2.0 is a wonderful read. And of course, I'll share it with the podcast. But in that, you do share a very specific area that I want to sort of hone in on, which was, air mobility. And
Sure.
I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on air mobility. We tend to focus a lot on the ground. But I want to ask you a broader question. Where are we on the adoption curve on I mean, beyond planes? Where are we on the adoption curve? Is it, especially in comparison to what's going on land? Where do
Mhm.
you see air mobility at right now? What needs to be done?
Well, if you look at a hockey stick, if you lay a hockey stick flat, um, I think we are the drone or advanced air mobility industry is almost at where the hockey blade where take curves upwards, right? And so we are starting to see significant opportunity, significant activity when it comes to advanced air mobility. And when we talk about advanced air mobility, it incorporates a number of different types of technology. It includes drones, low altitude drones, unmanned aerial systems, UAS. It also incorporates, unique and advanced aircraft, aircraft that are have advanced propulsion or certain factors. It includes infrastructure that enables, safe flight, and safety is the utmost importance in a lot of this work, in all of this work. But we see a significant opportunity to not only help support the drone industry here in Michigan, helping companies thrive and grow, but we also see the use of drones for significant public good, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But also, there's a significant amount of opportunity right now in defense-related drone development, and Michigan is well positioned to be a go-to place, a go-to state for production, for supply chain, for product development, as we see a need to increase production in the United States for drone companies. There's a number of policies that have been put out recently, a number of executive orders at the federal level, and even executive directives at the state of Michigan level that are helping support the drone industry. And so we feel that Michigan is one of the leaders in advanced air mobility, and we feel that moving forward, we want to help spearhead the future of our airspace.
And I want to ask you a couple of questions based on the things you alluded to, because drones are, I mean, historically at least, they've been famously used in defense applications. And
Sure.
you mentioned they're starting, you're saying the hockey stick is starting to look upwards, particularly for commercial applications. So I want to maybe sharpen the pencil a bit on the differences as you see them. Are we seeing primarily, a defense equipment being used for commercial, which by the way is how the internet started, nothing wrong with that, maybe the
Yeah.
autonomous vehicle as well. But at the same time, uh, how are these different? Because the defense by definition is meant to not exactly be safe, but now
Sure.
you're aiming at keeping an average population safe. Uh,
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely different types of drones, right? Like for defense related drones, that whether it's used for kinetic warfare or for reconnaissance, um, that's going to be much different than what's being deployed in communities. Sometimes and oftentimes the software that's integrated into them are similar, but they look different, and they're used much differently. They're different drones, if you will. And so we see Michigan as, when it comes to defense, there's a lot of technology that's being developed through the Department of War and other federal agencies that will, so I guess vice versa, but technology being developed for defense related use cases can also be applied to commercial use cases, um, especially like software integration. And then also commercial technology that's focused on commercial use cases can be used to support defense needs. We're seeing a lot of that's kind of that dual use terminology. And so we work closely with our Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation here in Michigan, the Michigan National Guard, which is through the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We have a number of military training grounds in Michigan, all season, all weather, from For example, the National All-Domain Warfighting Center is about a 60-mile stretch in Northeast Michigan, where allied countries, throughout the year come to train with our soldiers. And so we have a lot of assets in that regard. And but I think what's really exciting, and it might be more, might resonate a bit more with the general public, is drones and how they can support commercial use cases, or drones for good, if you will, right?
And what are these commercial use cases that you think are
Yeah,
gaining
sure.
traction? And
Yeah.
I also wanted to sort of add in a question on how different is it from what we're seeing in cars and autonomous vehicles, software-driven vehicles, and just if you could contrast what's going on in advanced air mobility to the car.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty unique. I think there's some similarities between the emerging drone industry and the changes that the auto industry has seen over the last decade or two. For automotive, we've seen the emergence of software-defined vehicles, or some level of autonomy, right? In most brand new vehicles, there's lane assist, there's emergency braking, and that's only getting more and more robust for vehicles. And then obviously, although we're seeing a little bit of a plateau currently in the electric vehicle market, we're still fully committed to the future of electric vehicles. And if that's something that if someone would like to purchase an electric vehicle, we want to make sure that they have the infrastructure here in Michigan. I would just say, though, what's unique is that with drones is that we've never really seen aircraft in the airspace outside of like manned aircraft that move people or cargo at higher elevations. When it comes to automotive and ground-based vehicles, we're seeing some like ground-based robots that deliver deliver food in urban communities.
Sidewalk robots and so on, right?
Right, exactly. Yep. But in aviation, this is the kind of first time we've seen such activity and growth and opportunity when it comes to aircraft at low altitudes. If we could being deployed in a safe way, I'm happy to talk about some of those use cases too. Like we're seeing a lot of opportunity with medical delivery. How do we get critical medical supplies to pharmacies or to a customer's door in rural communities? We see opportunities when it comes to using drones for inspection. How do you more safely inspect and maintain infrastructure, whether that's bridges? Drones are used for that. Drones are used for precision agriculture as well. We see a lot of opportunities there. And then for public safety, ensuring that drone as a first responder, how can a drone get to an accident location and be able to provide critical information to the responders before they get there? So I think the big one that we're seeing, one of the more exciting ones for me personally, is the medical delivery and working with hospital systems in Michigan to test and over time hopefully commercialize an ongoing drone medical delivery operation. That's been really exciting to see.
And may I ask you a specific question, which is similar to what we're seeing in the autonomous vehicle deployment as well? At this point, of course, is the industry nascent enough that it's not necessarily it's a broader societal safety and impact argument rather than a pure economic one? In simpler words, is it already cheaper to do certain things with a drone than to do it the old way yet? Or are we still in a technological curve where that's being figured out?
That's a really good question. What's in some cases, I think
autonomous vehicles, autonomous vehicle, you argue that yes, they're trying to make people safer, but they're
yeah,
significantly more expensive.
and it has to be economically feasible to be sustainable long term. And I think that it's still fairly early, although as some may see, large companies like Amazon and Walmart are currently deploying drones day to day. Actually, on my way down to work today, I looked up in the sky and I saw an Amazon drone. So from their distribution center in Pontiac, Michigan, if you're within 5 miles of their distribution center, when you go on Amazon, you can click drone delivery, and I think it's like $1 or $2 more. And so obviously, Amazon has much deeper pockets to be able to maybe eat some costs they're seeing up front. But I think that they wouldn't, just my thought, like these they wouldn't be making these investments in deploying these new technologies if there wasn't if they didn't see it to be economically feasible long term. Many of the projects that we see across the state that we're supporting are still kind of in that pilot phase, and that's kind of what we're
Fair
helping
enough.
industry. Yeah.
But let me ask you a sort of, classic question on drones, right? Of course, they're going to be very safe but they're going to be very safe when they're flying over relatively low density farms, forests,
Yeah.
lakes, and so on. But do I really want in a slightly dense population, call it Detroit, a refrigerator flying on top of my head?
Right. Yeah, and I think again, safety is of the utmost importance in working with the community, educating, getting community feedback is something that's is front and center on all these projects. But oftentimes the drone is not this is it's small drone. It's gonna move packages maybe 5 to 10 pounds max. But what's really important to be able to really help enable drone operations, we have to get what's called beyond visual line of sight approval, or a waiver through the FAA for beyond visual line of sight operations. And that's something that the FAA is working to expedite that approval process.
And just for
What
simplicity, it's ensuring that you're able to test your drone that goes away from where you cannot see it anymore.
Correct. Test or actually just use it a commercial operation. Right now, largely drone activity is there has to be a pilot that has an eye on the drone at all times. But to get that working for the beyond visual line of sight approval, it really opens up a lot of opportunity. But that, in order to get that, it makes sure that you submit a plan that shows that you have a digital tracking system, you have radar systems that track the drones to ensure detection of other aircraft. And these drones are at much lower altitudes than traditional aircraft. And also to get that approval, you can't fly near an airport. They're going to take routes that have low ground risk.
Right.
So, for example, like, can a drone follow a river, or can a drone follow train tracks where there's low ground risk, right?
I see your point. But let me talk to you a bit about, look, obviously you're building towards a vision of a future. What does success look like for, of course, mobility in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, mobility broadly. I think it's
And we can start with advanced air mobility because I know that's our focus for the day.
yeah, I think just in general though,
The MEDC,
it's
yes.
success is multifaceted. It's we want to ensure that Michiganders have um, high paying, high paying jobs, strong jobs in Michigan, and have job opportunities because we have a strong economy. We have a strong network of companies that are hiring, and Michiganders and people that are looking to move to Michigan have opportunities for a successful career, whatever that looks like. We also want to improve transportation, again, of people and goods. How do we make truly on a day in and day out basis, someone that may not be able to drive, or I'm thinking of my grandmother. She's not able to drive to her medical appointments, or so how do we ensure that these types of barriers, we break those barriers down, and because of new mobility solutions, and not just pilot them, make these ongoing sustainable services to the people of Michigan and beyond. And so I think that's what success looks like, is moving from the pilot phase to full-on day-to-day operations that all Michiganders can access
All
to.
Michiganders.
Yes, absolutely.
So
And then at the same time, how do we make sure that our economy is thriving and people have opportunities for very fruitful careers?
absolutely. So among all Michiganders, I want to ask you specifically about startups who may be, of course, listening to the show. What should they be doing as they look to work with the MEDC and your organization
Yeah, absolutely.
and organizations, of course, and then organizations
Sure.
across the world?
Yeah, we often act as the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification acts as kind of a front door to opportunities in Michigan. And if we're not able to support you, we want to put you in touch with someone, partners of ours that can. And we really highly encourage listeners to check out our website. It's michiganbusiness.org/OFME. Again, that's michiganbusiness.org/OFME. From there, you'll be able to learn a lot more about our office, our resources, our services, and also sign up for our newsletter and also get in touch with us directly. We love to have one-on-one conversations to learn about your goals, your objectives, and how we might be able to support. We have great local partners throughout the state that have co-working spaces. If you're not quite ready to bring in your set up a office or a facility, there's kind of landing pads that you can first enter so we definitely would really highly encourage anyone listening that wants to learn more about Michigan's market and opportunities here in Michigan, the mobility ecosystem, to reach out to us through our website.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And Charlie, I did want to summarize our conversation. And Michigan is really focused on both making transportation for all, but also ensuring careers in transportation for all of those who are interested. With 60% of all automotive R&D and transportation R&D in the United States happening in Michigan, and more than 1.1 trillion in goods moving through its borders annually. Michigan's story continues to be a pioneer in all things mobility. From really building the first assembly line to the first electrified wireless charging road, and now talking about the advances in advanced air mobility. There is simply no better proving ground than the great state of Michigan. To our listeners, the next century of mobility is being engineered right now with leaders like Charlie Tyson in the great state of Michigan. And with that, I want to thank you for this time, Charlie, and look forward to meeting you again.
Thanks so much, Hari. Appreciate it. Thanks again.